Okay. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for tuning into another podcast. I'm your host, Donna Moulds, and I'm being joined today with a guest, Todd Donny Maguire. Now, before we dive into today's conversation, I just want to give you a warning that we are speaking about suicide, grief, trauma, psychological injury, and these are really important conversations, and they're also deeply personal conversations. So if you think any of these topics will be triggering for you, please pause here, take care of yourself, make sure you've got support systems around you. And this episode will be here when you're ready. There's no obligation to listen to today. And for those of you who are staying with us, thank you so much. This is the exact kind of conversation that reminds us we're not alone and sharing a story can actually change lives. So my alarm is now going off. I had every precaution done except that one. So my guest today, as I said, is Todd Donny Maguire. He's a former undercover police officer who spent years under constant pressure and real repeated risk. So early in his career, Todd's partner, Karen, died by suicide. He carried that grief unprocessed and walked straight into one of the most psychologically demanding roles available, which is undercover work. And for 2 years, he lived as Donny Wilson, embedded with the state's most violent criminals, addicts, and organised crime figures. So 16 months in, he found himself surrounded by 3 armed men in a forest, genuinely believing they were going to walk him to his grave. That level of danger was not unusual, and through all of it and unresolved grief, he was quietly doing its own damage. So what followed was a period of self-destructive behaviour, declining mental health, and a death wish that was not about wanting to die by his own hands, but about wanting the crooks to end the pain for him. That is a powerful and precise distinction. So now, based in the Whitsundays, Todd shares his story through his memoir, Donny, an undercover cop with a death wish. His message is clear: psychological injury deserves the same openness, care and urgency as physical injury. Silence is not strength, it's a slow accumulation of damage. He also hints that there's another book in him, and given what this one holds, that will be worth waiting for. So welcome, Todd. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much. Yeah. How's that introduction? Wonderful.
There's a
I
lot.
thought you were talking about someone else there for a while. It really was.
It's interesting, isn't it, when other people talk about you, they're like, is that really me?
Yeah.
But there is a lot to unpack here. And one of the things I want listeners to really think about is this thought of what happens when you don't deal with pain and how life eventually forces you to deal with it. You can resonate with that quite a lot.
That is exactly what my book is about.
Yeah.
I know it says it, it talks about undercover. That was just one part of the journey. But essentially, it's me not dealing with any of the trauma and the grief. I pushed it down. I drank, took drugs, and engaged in stupidity activity so I could just forget about it. And I thought that was all it.
That risky behaviour that people do. Yeah.
And you don't know why you do it. Maybe, I don't know if it's part of reaching out, asking for help because you don't want to ask for help, but that I can't explain it. But yeah, PTSD and those sort of things, they don't disappear if you don't deal with them. They just sit and wait, and they did with me. So.
And rear their ugly head at the most inopportune time. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I have some deep dive questions for you, and I'd love to dive into them now. And if this takes us somewhere else, then so be it, because that's what the beauty of the podcast is. And listeners like where the podcasts generally go. So let's get started.
Cool.
So before everything changed, how would you describe who you were at 25?
What I was a very naive, lack of resilient person. that had had a wonderful upbringing.
Yeah.
And had not had any adversity whatsoever. And I thought life was just a bunch of roses. It really was. It was great. Everything had worked out for me. I had been working, since I'd left school and, almost in the hospitality industry, at nightclubs, bars, island resorts, living the life, really loving life. I decided to join the police because I was playing rugby league as well, and the hospitality shifts didn't really help, and I thought policing would be better, but it really wasn't. Anyway, I enjoyed it, and then got sent down the Gold Coast. I was living initially at the barracks at Kira, 100 metres from the beach. The Kira Hotel was my local. Playing footy at Chidugan. Yeah, just life getting any better. I was honestly
living the best life.
well, that's what I thought. Well, this is being an adult. Happy days. How good's this? It's not that hard.
Yeah.
And,
adulting is not that hard.
No, it wasn't for me. Not then.
And, when you talk about having a relatively sheltered upbringing, how do you think that shaped you in the way for you to be able to deal with, what came next, especially being in the police force?
Well, it's only something that I've really reflected on in the last couple of years, and I've really pinpointed that. That's the whole crux of it. That the fact that I could not handle that adversity, and I fell really hard. I think that might have had something to do with it. I mean, I'm not blaming anyone. As a parent, you want to cocoon your kids, you want to make sure that they're safe and all these sort of things. But I hadn't experienced death, I hadn't experienced loss, I hadn't experienced trauma until that, and I got a lifetime worth of it, basically. But I didn't know how to deal with it. I had not been trained in it. No one had ever spoke to me in it. No one ever talked to me about it. I'd never seen anyone go through it. So it was just new to me, absolutely new to me. So
did you see how other people in the police force were dealing with it as well? Like, did you kind of talk about that kind of stuff?
No, I was only probably 2.5 years into the police, and it was just, everything was just fun and shiny and flash, and everything was pretty sexy. It was all cool. Everything was great.
Bit of ego.
Oh, absolutely, all of that bullshit. Yeah, and I never really considered that. It wasn't part of my vocab. It wasn't anything that came into my mind. Okay, you go and sit with families when their loved ones have died, but you still go home at the end of the day and you ponder on it, but you don't really think too much about it. Not until
because you've never personally felt it.
No, I mean it's still distressing when you do it. But when you finish work, you pretty much shut off. You don't think about it again.
So, and interestingly, so how many years in total were you in the police force?
27.
27. And so was it a continual thing through all of those, a continual thread through all of those years that people in the force kind of just didn't talk about stuff, especially when you've got the accumulation of stress and the accumulation of other pressures within the job?
Yeah, exactly. I personally don't know anyone in the police that doesn't have some sort of form of PTSD. Some might have it quite mild. Others might have it really severe, but a lot of them live in a very heightened sense of urgency, and they're always aware of their surroundings. They're always in the fight and flight mode. They're rarely relaxed, and that's not a good way to have your nervous system, really.
Yeah. And so can we talk a little bit about grief and the entry into trauma? So when Karen died, what actually happened internally for you that you didn't have the tools to process that at the time?
Well, it goes back to, when I opened the door and saw Karen, and she'd hung herself with an electrical cord, and I had her 4-year-old boy from a previous marriage in my arms, and I threw him as far as I could because I didn't want him to see it. And I still remember, I could still feel it. Like, it physically hit me so hard internally. it was like a truck hit me. It was like something hitting me that just took my breath out of me. And I used to also explain it like a big samurai sword just slashing open my chest and my heart and just ripping it into pieces. And the internal pain was just amazing. My legs gave way. I couldn't breathe. I was yelling, I was screaming. Some was coming out, some wasn't coming out. I don't know what, and time just stood still. I don't know how long it was, all of those things. But something that day it really did shift. It changed everything that I ever believed in.
Yeah.
Everything that, you grow up and you just accept it because that's what you've always done. I began to just challenge everything for some reason. I don't know. It's just makes you really think about everything and why you're here, why this happens, all of these things. Why did we go to this? Why did we do that? Why did we accept this happening? And I don't know. I turned everything on its head, and nothing made sense to me anymore. Uh, I seriously know that anger was a major part. I couldn't understand why this had happened.
Yeah.
To Karen, and then later, why did it happen to me? And then there was all this guilt. There was all this, why didn't I see it? Why didn't I stop it? I'm supposed to be trained in it, even though I'd never seen anyone, a loved one that was going through a mental health issue, but she was hiding it. And then it morphed into, was it something that I did? Was it me? This person would rather kill themselves than be with me. That's a bit of a shock to the self-esteem. And it really takes a bit out of you. And I was played a lot of rugby league. I was a bit of a, as I say, in the first at school and a prefect and, one of the cool kids and all that sort of bullshit. So, I wasn't a pushover, but I became a pushover. I was so afraid of losing anyone more.
Yeah.
And I had no self-esteem. I had no confidence. I couldn't look in people's eyes when I talked. And when I did, I noticed my bottom lip would start quivering, and I couldn't control it. Like if I talked about it or thought about it, I'd just bawl into, just start crying.
Can I ask you? Can I ask you, with you're explaining all of those emotions, I think you started with anger and grief and the questions of why. And did those come relatively quickly, or were these emotions that stayed for a while and then transpired into another one as time went on, or did they all happen really quickly?
It was a long time, yeah. And I remember, at one stage, obviously there was a lot of anger, there was a lot of confusion, and then there was a lot of compassion and love and appreciation. And at one stage I was walking around going, I've got to hand it to her. That's pretty ballsy what she did. She didn't bullshit. She just did it. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't even know. I respect that. Good on her. And then it got into, if she was in that much pain, I'm glad that she's out of that, all that sort of stuff. All of those things, yeah. And you just play around in your head all day, every day, and it's just not good for you.
And is it from me? Is it from the time, did it get worse when you closed your eyes to go to bed at night? Were there times where the days were harder or the nights were harder for you to process some of this?
Well, what was happening at night, and I cannot explain it. I don't understand. Maybe some professional might be able to. But as soon as the light turned off, I was in the most unbelievable panic mode. My heart would be racing through my chest. I would be physically convulsing, and I would be just looking at the door, looking at the window, looking at this, and then I would roll over and see, there was an empty space there, and sometimes I'd see her there, sometimes I wouldn't, and I couldn't sleep. I was in that much. I was so scared. I remember I was just so fearful, and that's why I went, I've got to drink myself to sleep. That's the only way I can get to sleep now.
And is that how that started more?
that's why it started, because I could not get to sleep, and it was so scary, and I just didn't want to face it again the next night, and then the next night, and then the next night. And then I started taking temazepam, and then there was 2 temazepam, 3 temazepam. And the next morning you're absolutely rat shit, but then you start drinking again, and it just, that's what it became, that, because I didn't want to go through that fear and that. I was, the walls would have been shaking. I was that shaking in my bed, and I was just scared shitless. I really was, and I don't know what for.
Yeah. And can you think about, with the tools that you have now, and if you had those tools back then, do you think it would have been different?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Can you give an example of what would have been different had you had different tools at the time? Can you think of maybe a couple of things that might have been different?
Well, I certainly wouldn't have drunken as much as I would have. Like, I was writing myself off every day,
Right.
passing out. That
By
was the only way I
yourself?
could get to sleep. Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That was the only way that I could get some sleep, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't have done that. I know that, because I know it just started into something that lasted for a long time. And I just know it's not good. When we talk about 2000, 2001, 2002, there was no internet. I couldn't do this. I couldn't surf there was no Facebook. There was no, reels of Instagram, where I've noticed in the last couple of years, for the first time ever, I resonate with that person. I go, oh, wow. I've been thinking that. I thought that was just me that was thinking that. Because when I was going through what I was going through, the only person that could give me any information on this was a psychologist, which in an hour's thing of me doing most of the talking, I didn't get much info. And as I said in my book as well, the other option was to go to a library and get a textbook, which would have been in a medical journal or something like that, or it was quite technical and quite sort of forensically driven, where a lot of these are anecdotal, lived experiences, which a lot of people can really resonate with. They go, wow, that's exactly what I've been thinking. And I've really noticed that in the last 5 or 6 years, where I've started sort of having a look at social media and going, oh, wow, I didn't know that. Yes, that's what I've been thinking. I wish I had those things back then. I didn't have any information. I didn't have any knowledge, which is the big difference. I wish I could have had knowledge.
Yeah, and if we look at even around the, 2020, when we had COVID and everything, everything has changed with how long it takes you to get in to see a psychologist, how long it takes you to get to see anyone, and specifically the level of care has, in my experience of talking to other people, the level of care has declined. And that's not to say that all doctors or services are like that, but there has been quite a decline since COVID. And I think I really agree with what you're saying about when you can actually connect and resonate with someone else, you don't feel so alone. You don't feel like you're the only person going through this. Yeah. And I guess that's why podcasts are also really good, because you hear other people's stories and journeys. And I can guarantee you, a listener or many listeners who listen to this will resonate with your story and, want to know more and learn from your experiences, which is great, because lived experience, people trust that a lot as well. So
when I was getting a lot of the, I was doing a lot of history in terms of myself, getting old photos, getting old diaries, all these things when I was preparing for the book. And I found there was just a single piece of paper with Lifeline on it, and it was just a letter from a counsellor that I'd been seeing, and it was in the middle of the year of 2000, so it was 6 months later.
Yeah.
And it says, Todd is experienced, obviously, depression, and he's quite sad. He's missing his girlfriend, and he's confused with the world and all that sort of stuff. But more importantly, he doesn't understand why he's still feeling this 6 months later. He said, I thought I should be over this by now.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and went, holy hell, 20-something years later, I'm still not over it.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, I think we put a timeline on how long something should take for you to actually get over something. And there is no timeline, right? It's your own time.
And I hadn't, as I said, I hadn't seen anyone else go through it. So I didn't know what to expect. And I hadn't spoken to anyone that could tell me otherwise. All of my friends were lucky, like previous me, that, they didn't have any trauma or grief. And all of my family and friends were lucky as well. So I wasn't surrounded by it, and I didn't know what to expect. So I just went, you'd think 6 months I'd be right, would you?
Is that, and I don't want this to sound offensive, but is that also a blokey thing?
Probably, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So when instead of stopping, you explained that you went deeper into high risk undercover work. What was driving that decision?
Yeah, I've really analysed that recently because I didn't think I was doing it at the time. And I've really sat back and I've had conversations with family members and friends and started saying, like, do you think I was a little bit loose back then? Was a bit, and like they've just gone, are you serious, mate? You're kidding. We thought you were dead like 10 times. Like, we didn't even know where you were. You didn't look right. You were just, yeah. They said, you're in a bad way, mate. And that's where the book came about. And I said, do you think I was on a bit of a death wish? And my cousin goes, absolutely. You didn't give a shit, mate. And I go, and then I started thinking about it, and really thinking about it, and I went, yeah, shit, yeah. What did I do that for? Why would I do that? Why would I do that? Why did I do that?
And hindsight's a wonderful thing, right?
Yeah, like, them saying, don't go to that bloke's house because, if you do, this is from another crook saying, this bloke's the president of a bikie gang. Like, if you knock on the door, you're going to get a shotgun in your face. So what do? I open the door and I get a shotgun in my face.
Right.
I wouldn't do that normally.
And interestingly enough, when you're saying that, and I'm going, someone who has lived a very sheltered life could not even comprehend that, and it's interesting because that makes me think about my son went down a very dark path for a long time, and there's things that he did in his life that I can't comprehend because I'd never lived that life. But to him, it was nothing. To him, it was like, yeah, whatever, And to me, it's like, oh my God. As the mum, I think.
It is very different as a parent, but isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. So
I know that when, I hadn't finished the book, and I said to my my wonderful editor and publisher, Roxy, I said, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I got imposter syndrome. I said, no one is going to want to read this bullshit. Really.
Yeah.
I said, this is not cool. Like, there's nothing exciting in there. And she goes, are you serious? She goes, I think I counted, you had 4 guns to your head, 3 knives to your throat. You had a Vietnamese triad hit out on you for $100,000 and you all escaped it. And like, in the meantime, you're walking into houses and buying, copious amounts of drugs and pocketfuls of cash. And I went, yeah, but that's normal, isn't it? And she goes, no, it's not. I said, well, it was for me.
Yeah, definitely not in the realms of normal, Todd. Not at all. So, so you were living undercover externally, but also dealing with some internally stuff. Like, where did those two worlds collide?
Yeah, pretty poor actually. Yeah, it was. I enjoyed being away as Donny because Donny had no hang-ups and he was a fun bloke to be around. He was always up for a party and a laugh and anything to get so the brain didn't have to work, really.
Right.
That's what he was doing. When Todd had some days off and headed back to Brisbane to sort of catch up with families and stuff, and that's when all the issues and all the dramas from what had happened, is all the things that I then had to address, and I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to avoid it. I said, Donny was having too much of a good time, and then I had to ruin it by going back for 2 or 3 days and have to deal with all this other stuff. So guess what I did? I drank.
Yeah.
I drank,
and did you
I
go
drank,
back less?
No.
Did that? Oh, okay.
I probably drank more when I got home.
Right. Right.
There's a story in the book which I'm really embarrassed about, but I tell it because it explains the mindset that I had back then.
Mm-hmm.
It was my birthday, and my family had organised a dinner over at Inverpilly in Brisbane, and I'd been drinking non-stop for 2 days. I hadn't gone to sleep, and I was just on a bender. And
Wow.
it was like in the afternoon, 5 or 6 o'clock. My sister was ringing me all day, and I wasn't answering. And I was at a pub at the Paddo, Paddington, around there, and wasn't answering. Somehow she's found out where I was, because I just remember playing pool and looking up and seeing her face looking at me. I went, "How'd you find me?" And she goes, "You coming to dinner or what? We're all going. This is for you. Don't be an arsehole." All that sort of bullshit, what family members do. And I said, "No, not going. Go and have dinner for me. Have the cake for me. Fuck off." All that sort of, that was my attitude. That really, I didn't care.
Yeah.
And something must have happened, because I then remember, as they were driving down the street, I jumped on the front of the bonnet and said, "No, I'll come. Why not?" Yeah. So I jumped in the car, and then the mother, my sister's mother-in-law was in there, and she was prim and proper, and I'm swearing like a trooper, and it just wasn't cool at all. We go to the restaurant, and I'm absolutely full as a doctor's wallet, really. I was just gone, and I was putting shit on everyone, the waiter, the people sitting over there, just abusing them, swearing like whatever. And my brother and my dad would just keep saying to me, "Todd, man, you're really embarrassing me. This is really bad. Like, you're doing it really loud. People are going to pelt, like, whatever." I said, "I don't care.
Just the
So they're doing all this,
listen.
and the more you tell someone like that not to do it, what do? They do it.
Yep.
So
and they get
that's what I was doing. And I did. And I was obnoxious. I was a dickhead. I was an arsehole. And it's not my proudest moment, but I want to explain how I was feeling. And by this time, I was undercover, and I probably had $3,000 in my pocket. And it was not my money. It was money that I probably had to go and buy drugs with during the week. And I remember my dad said, "Todd, seriously, if you keep doing this, what we're going to do is that we're going to, how about we charge $1 every time you swear, and then you'll have to pay it back. You'll have to pay us the money at the end or something. That'll stop it." I got the $3,000 out of the pocket, and I slammed it down on the desk, on the table. And I said, "That should fucking cover it." And then pushed the table. Everyone went flying, and I took off.
Yeah. And family is left there.
Yeah.
Just besides themselves, and
like, not only did I embarrass them, like, they would have been going like, "We're losing a brother here. Like, what's going on?" Like, and I feel really bad about that. I really do now. But I was unable to be helped. Like, I wasn't accepting help either.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think anyone knew what I was feeling. I knew that when people would sort of say, "Oh, how you feeling?" Whatever. I said, "What would you fucking know, mate? Seriously, what would you know?"
Yeah.
Your bird died in grade 9. Like, that's the worst you've ever experienced. Yeah. And that's what made me so angry, because I felt no one could understand what I was going through, because I felt there was nothing else back then to make me understand it, and to see that other people in similar situations could actually do it.
And can
I
you
make
now
an
have
analogy
those Sorry, keep going.
I make the analogy in the book that, whether it's, mental health professionals or just friends or whatever, and I don't mean anything bad by them, because it's well intentioned.
Mm.
But I could tell straight away when I start talking about my story, you can see people's fear in their face and they don't know what the hell to say. They really don't. It makes them panic.
Mm.
And but then I can see the people that have been through it, and you can just see their shoulders go down and go, oh, yeah, I feel you. I've been there. I've done that. And I know that. And it makes it feel so much better. You feel like you're talking to someone that totally understands. And I'm not saying that they had to experience suicide or anything like that.
Mm.
Significant grief, significant trauma is the same thing. And the analogy I make in my book is, the way that I explain it is that it's like a man trying to tell a woman what they're going to experience in childbirth.
Yeah.
It's just impossible.
Yeah, for sure. But having that connection with people who can resonate with you because they've had similar experiences, not the same. Everybody feels it differently, but to be able to connect with someone who understands, I mean, in a humorous way, I could liken that to a man or even a younger woman is not going to understand a woman going through menopause and
Exactly,
the hell on earth that comes with that. So, when you have lost, and I don't want to compare menopause to losing a loved one, absolutely not. But when you have someone who can understand loss and grief and trauma, there can be a connection there of just simply understanding and being there, not having someone have to say something. Because a lot of the time I think people are looking for something that they could say that might make you feel better.
Yeah, exactly. And I never really, I didn't get angry with them. I wasn't upset with them. I was probably just more disappointed in the world that there was no one there that I thought could say the right thing, because no one was trained around me that knew what to say. And I talk about the things that I hated to hear in the book. She's in a better place now. Lucky it happened now, not later. Oh, there's more fish in the sea. Let me know if you need anything. And I go, thank you. All of that's great. And that's what I said. It's all well-meaned. They're not trying to be rude or anything. And I said, in my case, here's a couple of examples that I think would have worked well with me. That was really shit what you had to go through, man. Oh, fuck. Hey, if you're feeling like shit, mate, I'll sit with you. I'll sit in the shit with you, and we'll just talk shit, or we'll watch footy. We'll just do whatever. We don't have to talk about anything. Another one is,
That is so awesome. So awesome. Let me sit in the shit with you and not say anything.
Yeah, I don't even know how you're feeling or anything. I know you're feeling like shit. I'll sit with you.
Yeah.
Another one is, it became taboo to say the word Karen around me. And I was like, why aren't people saying anything? Like, she doesn't exist anymore. Not only, physically, but we're not even allowed to talk about it now. And like every time I talk about her, shit. And all I wanted to do was, remember when Karen used to do that? I used to love when she did that, Make it feel like she's still alive. But no, it became...
Did anyone ask you, what do you need?
Yeah. Oh, wow, yeah.
Because if people simply said, instead of if you need anything, give me a call, saying, tell me what you need right now. And we do this in my family, especially with my daughter that lives here with me. We talk about things and I just went through a bit of a challenge last year, and we came up with this thing that I'm like, this is what I just need you to hear me right now. I don't need you to solve the problem. And the first few times we did this, my daughter would go, she would make a face. And for people who are listening who can't see this, she makes she goes, okay, give me a minute. All right, I'm ready. And then she would listen and she would go, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I go, this is really hard for you right now. And she goes, mm-hmm. But now we do it easily because now it's become such a natural thing to go, I just need you to hear me right now, not fix anything or respond.
I mean, all human beings want to help someone when they're when they're challenged or they're in trouble. That's just a natural thing. And I understand that.
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story. We were in a shop at the supermarket one time and my daughter said something to me. It was a nothingness. It wasn't anything other than, I think she mentioned that we could use this colour to cover your grey hair. We were in a hairdressing shop and I've just burst into tears. And she's like, I don't know what to do right now. And I said, I don't know what to do either. But, I think as we get older, we can communicate better and ask for what we need. I mean, I think some people still have a long way to go, but do you think it's more powerful to be able to say what you need in this moment?
It's a great idea. I'm going to start using it. I think I have been, but I haven't consciously done it. Yeah. I do know that, part of, I'd have to say that, I didn't really start this until probably 2 or 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still very new to, trying to heal from the 20-something years before that.
Yeah.
And I'm learning so many different things that I wish I knew earlier. But I do know that this age, I don't know if it's the age or it's the time past when Karen had passed away, but I know that if I tried to do this 10 years ago,
mm-hmm.
I would have been so worried about what people were thinking about me. And I would have been worried about, especially that bloke, footy player, whatever, they're going to think I'm a pussy, they're going to think I'm a wuss. And I was so worried about it. And I was also worried about my promotional prospects in the QPS. I really thought that if anyone had any idea
mm-hmm.
that I had an inkling of, mental health issue, you're written off, you're gone. So I didn't want anyone to know that.
But Todd, that's a reality though, isn't it? That's not just an inner fear. That's a reality.
I'm not making that up. That's not just me. That is true. That is true.
For sure. And so is there, and I know this question wasn't written down for you and we've kind of gone off on that a bit, but this is a beautiful conversation. I hope you agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you have that freedom to speak about how you feel and what you're dealing with, whether it's something from your past or something that you're currently dealing with, do you feel a sense of freedom that you can just speak openly about it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I got to the stage where I worked out holding it in was so much more painful mm-hmm. than whatever people were going to think about me. And I just, when I hit 50, I think it was, that was basically the turning point. Seeing, parents passing away, friends passing away, realising that you've only got 25 probably good years left in your life. And I think I made that decision. I'm sick of living like this. I've got to do something. I really do. And one thing that I've noticed since I've done the book and started, talking and doing some speaking and so forth, it has connected people so much. And you just don't realise how much people are going through. And so many people come up to you, give you a hug and say, man, I'm so proud of you. I'm so glad that you were vulnerable. Most people say, I thought you're the last one to be like that. But it's given me the courage to speak up about what I've going through right now. And
Oh my God, that in itself is probably one of the hugest things that I think is so powerful about sharing your story is someone going, wow, I'm not alone.
I'm getting them daily, and
Mm,
it is filling up my bucket. It is amazing. I never, it never entered my mind when I was reading the book that that was going to happen. I was doing it selfishly to get it out of my system and
mhm.
just to tell a story,
Yeah.
and it's all gone. It's done. But what's happening now, and I'm, I'm over the moon about it. And I've always said Karen's death felt like it was all in vain and it was all for nothing.
Mhm.
And I always wanted to find somewhere to honour it and make it meaningful. I think I finally found it, and it makes me happier.
Yeah. That, I
Yeah,
mean, it's something to be truly proud of, isn't it? To have a legacy live on and to know that you're touching lives and probably touching lives wider than what you anticipate
yeah,
at
yeah.
this time. So,
Yeah, some particular blokes, which I thought, these were pretty tough fellas, and they're jokers, and some famous blokes, some footy players, some actors, and shit. And I was at a table one day, and someone said, "Aren't you giving me a book, telling me about your book?" I went, "Oh no, 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 that's just setting myself up for failure here." Gave him the book, and within 5 minutes, he's telling me about a story that he's going through right now, and he had tears going down his, and it's just like, wow, wow, how good was that? And he just
yeah,
went, "Thank you, Todd. Man, I needed that."
yeah. Was that imposter syndrome that came in when someone said share the book? Yeah, yeah,
Yes, yeah. And that
yeah,
was in the earlier days. And they were the
mm,
ones where I've sort of grown from that now, but they were the early days where I'm going, oh, no, 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 no. But now, um, I do it now purely to get that connection. And I've sort of, I've sort of morphed it into a next one where I've started working out through talking to blokes at different times. I've worked out that we hate looking at each other while we talk. We're
yeah,
shoulder to shoulder. I said, come on,
yeah,
brother. We're going shoulder to shoulder. You don't have to look at me. Let's talk.
mm,
And man, it's so much more powerful.
yeah,
And I sort of delved into it a bit more, and there's even more sort of dynamics to it where if you're like this with blokes, that's a contest. You're on one
yeah,
side, you're on the other side.
yeah,
If you're next to him, we're on the same team.
yeah.
I'm with you. You're with me in the trenches, brother.
And it's so true. And,
Yeah,
and sometimes that eye contact can make people feel uncomfortable because then they start thinking about, are they going to judge me if I say this? And then you've got all of those
absolutely.
stories going through your head. So, um, turning point and awareness. So, what was the moment or a series of moments where you realized something had to change? And, this might have been with your drinking, it could have been with your risky behavior. Can you think of a specific moment?
I remember the very first one. There's been heaps and heaps in the last 25 years, but the very first one, and it's in the book, and it was a real it was a real awakening for me, and it really showed how reckless I was when I really reflected on it later that night. But I've been doing an undercover job in the Valley, Fortitude Valley, it's the nightclub area, and and it was a pretty easy job. It wasn't dangerous or anything like that, but it was just go out and buy as many pills as you can, just try and find out what's going on, be there, listen to people, just embed yourself in the place and just find out more. And so I did that, but I sort of befriended a fella who was going through a marriage breakup. He had two kids, and but it was my job. I bought drugs off him, bought some MDMA pills and a fair few of them,
Mhm.
and he was just going through a really shit time in his life. He was a crook. He wasn't a bad person. He wasn't. He had a job during the day. He wasn't a criminal in any other way, and he hadn't been ever in his life. But for the last 3 months, he made a very poor decision.
Yeah.
Actually, I liked him as a person. We got on really well. Uh, and he was quite lonely. I think he'd lost a lot of his friends through the marriage breakup. So he sort of connected with me pretty easily. And and we got on well. Anyway, we closed the job. He was then aware that I was an undercover cop and I wasn't really Donny, but I hadn't seen him again, and I knew that he was charged with trafficking of dangerous drugs, and he would have been more than likely looking at a jail time, which he ended up doing. And anyway, I got a phone call, and it was his name come up on the phone, and I'm thinking, oh, here we go. He's probably drunk, and he's probably going to give me a spray. We were supposed to be mates. You dogged me. You did that. I didn't know you were a cop. Yeah, how do you feel? All those sort of things. I've had them before a few times, and but it was really different when answered the phone. He was crying, and he's going, Donny, just tell my kids that I love them, and tell my wife that I'm sorry. And I'm going, hey, what's going on here? What's going on? What are you doing? And he was standing on the cliffs for the Brisbane River at New Farms, and he goes, no, I'm jumping. I'm out. He goes, I'm not going to jail. And I said, no, don't do anything. I'm only 10 minutes away. I flew over the other side of the city and found where he was, because I knew when I sort of explained, well, where I am. He said, in this park. We're about to go out. So I ran over to him, and he was just looking straight over, and it's probably a couple of 100 metres down. It would have finished him off. But that was the mindset that I had as well. I grabbed his hand and I said, oh, let's go. 1, 2, 3, let's go. And he's yanked me back. And I said, what are you doing? What are you making things up? What are you you're a pussy or what? Like, you're going to do it? I'll do it with you. Let's do it. Let's do it. And I was just yelling at him, and I was like going, man, I don't want to be here. Let's fucking do it. So I grabbed him again. I said, come on, let's go. 1, 2. And he's really yanked me back, and we fell onto the ground. He was crying. I started crying. And that was the gravity of, I really realised, oh, God, what the hell did I do? Because I had 1 foot over. And for the next 3 hours, we sat on a park bench, shoulder to shoulder. I didn't even realise that back then. And we spoke for hours and hours, and he was talking about how much he'd miss his kids, and he'd never really wanted to do it, but, the pain was too much, and it was like, God, this is all sounding familiar. Oh, Jesus. And then I went back to my safe house that night by myself, and I remember for the first time in, 18 months, I hadn't been able to cry. I hadn't been able to show any emotion. I was like a train wreck, just waiting to crash.
Yeah.
And I pulled my eyes out all night uncontrollably, and I just went, okay, that's enough, Todd. That's enough. You've got to stop this shit. It wasn't as simple as that. I was still in a habit of drinking too much and taking drugs. And the one thing I did notice is that my reckless behaviour I toned it down a fair bit.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, you had years of doing something a certain way. It doesn't take 5 minutes to change.
Yeah, I still had drama sleeping, so that was still a problem. And that's what, the drugs and the alcohol was for. But I know a few times when, I would have easily go and do that, go and pick that up, go and do this, go and whatever. It was like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that today. No, I don't feel like doing it. And for the first time ever, I had just the smallest bit of fear of, oh, no, I don't like that. That doesn't sound good.
Wow. And that's where your nervous system starts to change, right?
Yeah. And I really noticed that I never had fear before, and I started having small amounts of fear.
Yeah.
Enough to notice it going, oh boy, what the hell is that?
You said writing your book was a cathartic process. What did you confront through that process that you hadn't faced before?
I don't know. I can't explain it, but I wrote the book in 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
6 weeks. Like the very first draft.
Yeah.
It took months and months of going back and forth and trying to make it look like better than chicken scratch. But I sometimes would start at 6 a.m. and I'd still be typing, and I wouldn't leave the desk till 8 o'clock at night.
Right.
I sometimes would even get up and I'd hardly have a feed. If I would, I'd go get a sandwich, come straight back and just get straight into it. And I was immersed in it. I was obsessed with it. And I couldn't wait to get back to the computer to do it. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night. Oh, that's right. I forgot about that one. And I was like, I don't know. It's just something that just brought me alive again. And I felt good about doing it. And I felt, I don't know, I can't explain it, and I didn't think it was going to make me feel this good. I do talk about it, and I don't want to make it a negative, but yeah, all the amount of, cracks that I went through, it didn't help me because I wasn't ready. I think I had this mindset because I had no idea that they were supposed to fix me, because I would walk out of there after an hour and I'd find every negative in the world possible. I go, I still feel like shit. They haven't done their job.
Yeah. Not realizing that it's but writing it. I mean, I have journaled for years and years and years. I have journaled. I have all my journals still. And that's something that has always been something that helps me get out of my head. And so writing your book, getting it out of your head, when you explain that as being a really cathartic process, and I can see in your face too that it lights you up.
Yeah,
being able to share that.
Not only did I suppress it for myself, I didn't talk about it with anyone else. I was scared to talk about it because of the way they look at me. I didn't want to bring up those feelings again. I've got a new wife. Sorry, a wife. That's my only wife. So I've got a new partner, obviously, and wife. And I was always aware that that's an ex that I'm still got issues with, even though it's not the cause of that. It was the traumatic experience, which caused it, not the person or the feelings itself. But I would always be aware that just don't bring it up, don't talk about it, because I've even had it since this book has happened. My wife she was so supportive all the way through, and even she's been pulled aside by a few people and say, "Oh, you're right. That he's writing a book about an ex." He's not writing a book about an ex. He's writing about a traumatic experience.
Yeah. Isn't it funny, people's perception? So, Todd, for someone listening right now who looks like they're holding it together but struggling internally, what would you want them to understand about where the path leads if they keep holding it all in?
Yeah, it leads to destruction. You're like a time bomb, and it happened with me. It still happens to me every now and then. Obviously, Donny was my name, and because I sort of kept that as everyone has that alter ego when they're drunk and they call themselves a particular one. I did that. I said, "Oh, Donny's back again. Donny's back again."
Yeah.
And that was when I was drinking, and being an idiot and being too drunk and whatever. And then between me and my wife, it became, and she identified. She goes, "Donny's your PTSD. You know that." Oh, yeah. It's a representation of what had happened to you back then and how you behaved. And Donny's now, so whenever she sort of says, Donny's nipping at yours again, I went, okay. So it's enough to be aware that, I'll start getting angry, I'll start getting a bit jittery and all that sort of stuff. And sometimes I can't stop it, I can't control it, I keep doing it, but at least I'm aware of it and I'm starting to work on things. And there's some things that are, my next goal is to try and control the emotions.
That conscious awareness is something that, it does take work. And, and then it gets easier once you do that work. So, it's really good. But it's also wonderful to have people around you who can nudge you and say, hey, just so you know, they're really good people.
I know, but when it first happened, I didn't believe it and I didn't like it. And I said, that's not me. I don't do that, But, it's been times now where I've really reflected and, I've had to own it and it's all me, and I'm the one that's got to fix it.
Mm. Yeah. I have one more question for you before we wind it up, which is you talk about mental health like a physical injury. How did you get to that point where you talk about it like that? And what would you like listeners to understand about that?
Yeah, and it's something because, I was coaching rugby league. I was coaching all the way through from juniors through to A grade, so all the different age groups. And I love sort of being around the younger fellas and trying to develop them and trying to get them to have the knowledge that I didn't when I was young. And you can see a lot of them have got some mental health problems and their self-esteem issues and all these sort of things. And I wanted to come up with a way that it made them understand that it's not a taboo subject. It's not something that is embarrassing if you're not feeling well, you don't feel good, there's problems at home or whatever. So I did this presentation for these under 15 boys, and I said, photos of me with, in hospital with a major knee operation, and I've got a plate down my leg, and I had 2 major operations on my knees, and then I've got a plate in my arm here, and then I had eye socket. I got that smashed twice in footy, where I see double out of that eye, and I said, boys, you can see that. Like when I had all of these done, I went into emergency surgery straight away. We dealt with it immediately. And even though, and I'll say I'm not as fast as what I used to be, that's probably age, not my knee, but I say my knee doesn't work as good as it was.
Yeah.
And my arm's not, it still aches, and it's still, when it's cold, I can feel the plate, and, I can still feel where the crack is, and my eye, I still see double, but I've worked out that when you throw me the ball, it's the bottom one, not the top one. So, so I said, but then when, I had something really bad happen to me that, again, wasn't my doing, same as an injury that happened to me on the footy field, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not the same as that. I should have dealt with that straight away like I do with a footy injury, regardless of whatever. These things are not as good as what they were, but they haven't stopped me having a life. I can still run a bit slower. I can still whatever, and I catch the ball, the lower ball. It's still a good way to get around life. And I said, this injury is no different to that injury. I can still have a good life with it. I've just got to manage it, and I've got to know how to do that. And it's taken me a while to do that. And what I do know is that it's not alcohol, it's not drugs, it's not stupid behaviour. It's healthy eating, exercise, and probably the number one I've worked out since I've left the police and not doing shift work is quality sleep.
Yeah.
Quality
Absolutely.
sleep has changed my life. I'm now going to bed at the same time every night, waking up the same time in the morning, doing some exercise, and the day's amazing. Instead of getting home at 4 a.m, sleeping till midday, starting work at 2, and then the next morning's late, and then you do a night shift and then a down shift. And I was like, oh, this is killing me as well. Like that was making my PTSD even worse.
Yeah, sleep deprivation, I've always said, is such a killer. It really messes with your mental health. It messes with your, your capacity to function sometimes. And, and I always say it's interesting because when you are a young parent, whether it's mum or dad, sleep deprivation is kind of the norm, but I think that you can keep up with that, and then it goes away, and But now, when you were talking about, whether it's because you turned 50, you look at life differently. We know there are more years behind us than in front of us, and I think that changes the way you look at life as well.
I feel like I've missed a lot of things due to my unhappiness. I haven't seen the roses. I've looked at everything negatively because of not dealing with things. I haven't liked that. I've just had the shits with the world, and I've probably been very, very not very nice to be around. And I know that, and I don't want to be like that again. I want the next 25 years to be the best 25 years of my life.
Yeah. And smell the roses and enjoy the
Yeah,
little things in life.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
fantastic. I'm so grateful for this conversation. I'm really thankful that you came on and talked about this. If someone listening today would like to find your book, can you share where they will be able to get a copy of your book?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're in Australia, it was a self-published sort of thing, so I'm managing it myself, and it's just in my website, being www.toddmaguire.com.au. If you're overseas, you can get it through all the normal outlets like Amazon
Yeah.
and Kindle and all those sort of things. I'm in the process of trying to do a audio book very soon,
Fantastic.
and everyone's telling me I have to narrate it myself, so I will.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, excellent. So, and for any of you who are getting the podcast from Buzzsprout or from YouTube, there will be a link to the website in there. So you'll be able to, and I'll put an Amazon link in there as well so that you can get a copy. And if anyone does need support, please reach out to the support services that you use or Lifeline, Beyond Blue. There is a lot of services out there. Please don't go through this alone. And again, thank you very much, Todd. I look forward to sharing with you how many people listen to the podcast, and
Yeah, cool.
and they may reach out to you directly because I'll put a direct contact for you
More
as
than happy
well.
to. Yeah, yeah. Like, I was a bit again the imposter syndrome. I'd listened to a fair few of your earlier podcasts, and I'm going, oh, these are pretty smart people. These ones, they're pretty good. They're like experts. I'm not an expert in this. I'm just telling you what happened to me.
You're an expert in life, and that's one of the best experts around is living life and sharing your journey. So I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was awesome.